So I'm going to start with the top of this mushroom. You can choose whatever kind of colorway you want. I'm kind of squeezing water into this top here. I'm using the woodland set that I have. If you've got a nice tan or natural, that's great. You can also use some browns or some that kind of have that purpley brown in it to get your mushroom just the way you'd like it. And now, while it's still kind of wet, I'm gonna add the first layer of brown into mine, and in this case it's Bear in the woodland set. And so just go along here on this edge at the very tip of my brush here, just getting the first little layers of texture in here, and I'm following along some of the lines that I've given as a guideline. You don't have to do that. In here I even have a little bit of green, so I can go and add that now as long as it's not too saturated, and kind of start to put in some other color while it's wet, so it'll have a chance to kind of move around. Now I've got this water brush. You can dip your paint to change the color. I'm using this paper towel. I sell these in my shop or online. And I'm going to just kind of tap some color into a few of these suggested textured areas using a little bit. I like the purple in here, the purple, green, and brown. Right, to kind of hide your mistake is what I was trying to say. So you see coming in there, and if you draw a nice pigmented line here, you can kind of pull that with a clear brush and move that paint around. Now I'm going to add a little bit of green. Let's see, it's going to look a little bit muddy, but I think that's exactly how mushrooms look, a little bit muted and muddy. Now I'm coming in here, getting a few more darker spots. This is dry, so that's too dark. I didn't have enough water for that now that it's dry, so if that's not suitable, just take a little back. It may not be as professional, but I'm doing this for fun, and I bet you are too. We'll come in here and put in some of these details now that this is more dry. And let's see. Being very loose with applying this color, and because this is so dry now, I can even add just some clear water across here and blend that in so all of the white goes away. And now let's work on these leaves now that this is dry, and I've created kind of a light color leaf. If you want to do a fall one of these, you can certainly do some brown leaves. Ooh, that's very bright green, so I'll add a little into there. And I'm watching my Hedgehog here because I definitely want those two things to be able to integrate right here. So you can start with your Hedgehog. Either way is fine. I'm going to come in here and get this leaf painted in. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of, it's a little bit dark here, but this brown green to follow the stem. It's always good to practice doing really small lines before you go into the painting itself, because you will need to know how to do fine lines with a brush like mine or with your own brush, just making sure that you're not starting and then dropping down and having a fat line there. So, okay, now I'm going to just use my green out of my box to come up here while that's drying for a minute, and this is the fine line I'm talking about. I want to pull down toward myself. Your hand can get heavy, so you need to make sure to hold it well. And it's best to start at the tip of a branch and pull toward the stem. Instead of pulling away, you want to pull down toward yourself. Your hand is going to get heavy and get fatter as it goes down if you're not careful. So that way you can kind of control how far your line is and making sure you have a good easy end point into a stem. Okay. And we've got a few down here as well, so you can watch that very fine line. If you don't have a fine brush, you could either leave these unpainted and go over it with a pencil a little darker, or you can do kind of like this actually, just sort of cover it almost like it's a pine. The pine branch is just one instead of the little spikies up there. And then going to do maybe a little bit of brown and green mixture here. Test that out. The Sand Ridge, very light color here. You can even go in with water first, a wet on wet technique, and I'm making him much lighter than the mushroom. Maybe that color in the mushroom only. And then I've got this shadow color. You only want to do that when your leaf is already painted, even if you start with the hedgehog first so it doesn't bleed. And then we've got these little whiskers. You can, with a fine line with your brush, add that in. I've seen people do this and they get too fat with their brush, and actually because I already had that wet, it's starting to blur, so I really wouldn't do that until that's dry. I forgot, and you see I'm kind of cleaning up my mess there, and I'll come back to it later. But I can go ahead and do this brown down here because I do want it to bleed a little bit, and that will give it a nice soft texture. And so if you don't think you can do that well enough, you can go in later with some sort of pen and do those lines. So now with this, I picked like kind of a purpley color and follow some of these lines. Want them to be a little more, when these dry, those little bubbles, they will leave pigment sort of sedimentarily at the edges, so that way you can see each little stroke. So I'm adding those in here. And I will be adding another color in to that also in a second. So I'll go in while I'm waiting for that to dry and add a little more brown here to give this more definition, and maybe along here. And then also I'm going to take this gray and make a shadow across here now that that's dry. This one has a smaller top, so I don't want to make the shadow as deep, but this one has a big wide canopy on the top of it, so I'll put a little bit of shade in a couple places just to give that dimension. And then I've got these little floral berries here. So I'm going to do mine in kind of this foxberry. It's sort of a red. You could use pink or just leave the whole thing green. And I've got the stem here on this leaf. I've got to get it in the shot so you can see it. My brush ran out of water, so let me get that readjusted. And come here. And remember, I'd said we can come back in later and redefine now that this is dry. Some of these lines, I wanted them to sort of blur out earlier, and now this layer I want to be more defined, and I'm following some of these sketch lines here. And later when you decide to sketch by yourself and you've got some pencil lines, you can always erase them as long as you don't go over the sketch lines with the watercolor. They can't erase after that. So what I would do is draw in pretty lightly, but then take a kneaded eraser and kind of take away some of the, I want to take that line out there. I don't want it to be so strong. Pull back some of the weight of the pencil line. Using a mechanical pencil is good because if you're ever drawing your own, because it's especially if you pick a finer line, it's good. If you use like an HB or a regular pencil, it'll be a little bit dark. Okay, now this should be dry to put a little bit of those whisker lines in there. And you don't want to fill the whole eye in so it doesn't look completely black. And then now I'm going to use this gray. You can see what I'm saying, how there's this pool of minerals around each little stroke that I made earlier, which is nice because it gives that look of a quill. The fur, it's kind of stiff. do want to get where this hedgehog looks like he's in front of the leaf, so you may want to do the hedgehog first to ensure that that gets the look you want. And let me get his little eyeball. I'm going to kind of make that darker like his nose. And now maybe a little bit of a shadow underneath him. Kind of blend that pigment around. It's kind of thick. Great. So now that we've got that finished, you can do a sky. I have a fatter brush that you can use, or if this is all you have, you can use this one as well. But we would go around, this is the most wet, most recently done, so I'm going to start over here. And I am going to go and put a wet on wet technique of not too much water, definitely try to not pick up the color of the design I've already painted. So I've got halfway around here. I'm going to go ahead and start putting some blues in here. I don't know if I got water inside there. So I want to kind of move it left to right. It works out best since we are used to the horizon and we don't want to go up and down. That's not the way the sky looks in nature. Getting some water on that. And around the outside is already made for framing, so you really don't have to go all the way to the edge. You've got a good 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch there to work with. So you don't have to go all the way to the outside. And now I'm going to add the rest of my water here. And you can make it look really, really smooth and uniform, or you can have it have a little texture like you see me doing. Now that's a lot of pigment. I can either go like this and take some away, or just move it around. You can kind of scoop some up and move it to a different place. And I typically do not turn my pictures upside down the way I'm doing here, but for the sake of seeing it on the camera, I am doing that for you to be able to see it and get my hand out of from blocking your view. Now I went up and down there, but I want to make sure my strokes go left to right at this point. See that? I don't want that line there going up and down. So I'm moving very carefully around here. You can see right here I got into that berry, and now it's sort of bleeding a little bit. And it's not the worst in the world. Depends on the colors that are meeting, how bad it's going to end up looking if they collide. And now I'm kind of taking the end of my brush and going around these little spaces to kind of get some of that white space out of there. And I found some places where my color's going up and down, so I'm moving that. And I really don't want this line around my mushroom. I'll go over here and make that dark around that as well, just to match those two sides. And there you have it.